Hello CompuMove friends, welcome back to the channel for another CompuMove instructional video. Today we're going to take a look at data mining using the CompuMove report export clip function. Before we actually get started running a report though, we're going to learn how to make a macro in Excel to make one-click Excel importing fast and easy. Once we've done that, we're going to run a job data query for a bit of sample data. Then we'll use that Excel macro to bring the query results into Excel. And then we'll do some data mining. We're going to use an Excel pivot table to analyze that report data and accumulate some interesting subtotals. Thanks for joining us. Let's get started. Before we get started using the actual CompuMove export clip functions, it's very helpful to make a macro to give ourselves one-click capability inside Excel. Certainly not necessary to do so, but it's very convenient, so let's take a moment to do that. So I'm going to go to the View menu, and then I'm going to go to Macros, and I'm going to say Record Macro. I'm going to call this macro CM Clip, and it is going to be stored in the personal macro workbook, and so I'm going to click on OK. Once I've done that, Excel is actually recording my mouse and keystroke sequences, so let's go ahead and set up the sequence for the things we want to do. The first thing I'm going to do is highlight the first three columns and right click on them and do Format Cells and select Text. And I do this so that the record numbers that will appear in the first columns of almost every CompuMove report will be preserved with their correct formatting. Once I've done that, I'm going to also on the View tab go to Freeze Panes, and I'm going to say Freeze Top Row. And what that will do is position the rest of the spreadsheet to scroll underneath that top row so that the column headers will be preserved. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to left click in cell 1A and then right click and do paste, and it will drop in the data. You can see I've actually got some sample data already here. Then the final thing I'm going to do is go to the Home tab and click on Format and click on Auto Fit Column Width, which will resize the columns to match the data for each column in the export clip. Now I'm done with my sequence for the macro, and so this gray square in the lower left-hand corner is what causes it to stop recording, and so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. So now I've got a saved macro. So let's add it to our Quick Access toolbar. And this will be permanently added to the Quick Access toolbar so we can use it anytime in the future. So I'm going to pull that down. I'm going to go to More Commands, and then I'm going to say Choose Commands From, and I'm going to pick Macros. And I'm going to pick that CM Clip macro, and I'm going to say Add, and then it puts it over on the right-hand side under the Quick Access toolbar. Then I'm going to click on Modify, and I'm going to choose the happy face icon because I like that one, and then I'm going to say OK and OK. And so now I have that happy face icon on my toolbar, and so now I'm going to close the spreadsheet, and it's going to ask me, do I want to save my changes to this workbook? And I'm going to say no, I don't need to do that. But that's going to bring up another question, which is going to be, do you want to permanently save this macro? And I do want to do that, so I'm going to click Save, and then Excel is going to close, and now I have permanently added that happy face macro that's going to give me one click to my Excel instance. So now that I've created and saved an Excel macro, let's put it to use. I'm going to go to the Report menu, and in this particular instance I'm going to go to the Job Data Query. Pretty much every CompuMove report has an Export Clip button on it, but the Job Data Query in particular has a lot of columns that allow me to go digging and do some mathematical analysis. So let's go there. So I'm going to click on Job Data Query. I'm going to just work with my interstate move job types, and I'm just going to pick a date range, say the first few days of the month here. So once I've done that, I'm going to click on this button down here that says Export Clip. And what that will do is load up my Windows clipboard and make it possible for me to make a one-click entry into Excel. So let's do it. I click on Export Clip. I do get the hourglass briefly. If you have a lot of job data and you're running this query, it could take several seconds for that query to complete. In this case, I just have a little bit of data, so it happened very quickly. Now I'm going to bring up my Excel spreadsheet and I'm going to click on that happy face icon. And the data that I brought in is imported into Excel, formatted properly with just that click. I'm going to zoom out, and as you can see, there are many fields that are brought in. Dates, amounts, discounts, weights, miles, percentages, workers, salespeople, lead sources, revenue, statuses. There are many fields here. And so what we want to do now is we just want to use a couple of carefully selected ones to do a little bit of data mining. And here's how that works. I'm going to click on Insert, and I'm going to say Pivot Table. And it's going to want to know the range, and in this case I've just left it alone after hitting my macro icon, so all I need to do is click on OK. Now this is not going to be a complete tutorial on how to use an Excel pivot table. There are many functions here, but this is just going to be a quick look at an example that I think will make some sense. One of the key things you can see is that over here on the right hand side is every column that exists in our export clip is now available to us. And that's because of the way we set up the macro, and that's because of the way CompuMove puts out this data. So let's take a look at how we can build a quick pivot table and learn a few interesting things about this data that we've got in front of us. In this case, because I've chosen my interstate job type, I'm curious about how many shipments I've got coming from each state in my data set. And I also want to know the weight and the average weight and the shipment charges that are coming from each state organized by state. That's a simple example of something that you might want to do with a pivot table, so let's go ahead and do it. The first thing I'm going to do is scroll down my list until I find origin state. There it is right there, and I'm going to drag it twice. I'm going to drag it to the rows column, and I'm going to drag it to the values column. And you can see already I've got 2 shipments out of Arizona and 1 shipment out of California. As simple as that. The next thing I want to do is scroll up and find the shipment net weight and drag that down to the values area. And you can see that sums that up. If I want to know, so that's worth knowing. I now know I've got 26,000 pounds that came out of Arizona. But if I want to embellish it a little further, I'll drag net weight again and I'll pull it down here. And then I'll pull down the combo box and I'll select value field settings and I'll say average and say OK. So now I've got 2 things going on. Here, for the 2 shipments that came out of Arizona, I've got the sums, and here I've got the averages. And that's because of the options that I chose when I dragged that down to the value area. This is basic Excel pivot table, but it's an extremely powerful function, as you can imagine. So let's do something else. Let's take a look at the charges that we've generated. So I'm going to do basically the same thing. I'm going to take total charges and I'm going to drag it down here. Let me move this up to get a little more room. So now you can see I have sum of total charges, and in the same way, if I want to know the average of that, for example, I'll go ahead and drag it down there, and then I'll pull it down, and then I'll choose value field setting, and then I'll do average, and then I'll do OK. And then of course the rest of the rules of Excel apply. So suppose I want to take these two columns and format them for numbers, get rid of the decimals, use the thousand separators, say OK, and then these next two columns, because they're money, I'm going to format them, and I'm going to say currency, and I'm going to say OK. So now I've got some very interesting information. I've got two shipments out of Arizona. Their total weight was 26,000 pounds. Their average weight was 13. Together, that was $19,000, $9,900. One shipment out of California with the same kind of numbers. Excel pivot tables have got a zillion functions. You can make pie charts. You can do all sorts of analysis. But what it allows you to do is make your own decision regarding how you want to look at data, how you want it formatted, how you want it presented. Once you get started with this function, you'll find yourself looking for things you never thought of. And that really is the point, is that you are empowered to go data mining into the dozens and dozens of fields that come out of the export clip function from the job data query and make your own conclusions for a management purpose in a way that you get to control. So that's a look at how to use the CompuMove reporting export clip function with the aid of a worthwhile macro to go digging into your CompuMove data and learn valuable things about your business. If you've got any questions about this, as always, please don't hesitate to call our office, and thanks for watching.